When was the last time you felt completely overwhelmed by an emotion? That surge of anger, that wave of anxiety, that flood of sadness that felt like it would never end. Years ago, I discovered something that completely transformed how I handle and understand emotions. It's called the 90-second rule, and it changed everything I thought I knew about feelings. I can still recall that day. I was standing in my office, my hands shaking, my heart racing, after a heated argument with a colleague. It feels like this anger that will consume you. But then I remembered this fascinating truth. The actual psychological response of an emotion, the chemical cascade in our body, lasts just 90 seconds. What happens in those 90 seconds is pure biology. Your brain releases a flood of chemicals. Your body responds. Your heart rate changes, your muscles tense or relax. And then, if you let it, it passes, like a wave crashing on the shore and receding back into the ocean. Here's what nobody told us about emotions. They're meant to move through us, not take up permanent residence. When an emotion seems to last for hours or days, it's usually because we're re-triggering it with our thoughts, creating a loop that keeps the chemical cascade flowing. Let me share with you what I've learned about the incredible 90-second window. Think of it like a weather system that's moving through. The initial storm, that's your chemical response. The aftermath, that's your choice. You can either let the skies clear naturally, or you can keep seeding the clouds. I remember the day this really clicked for me. I was in the midst of a personal crisis. I was feeling an anxiety that seemed endless. But when I started timing these emotional waves, I discovered something life-changing. Every surge really did have a beginning, a peak, and an end, if I didn't feed it with my thoughts. Here's what actually happens in those 90 seconds. The first 30 seconds, the triggers hit and chemicals flood your system. The next 30 seconds, your body responds, your heart rate increases, your breathing and your muscles. The final 30 seconds, the chemical response begins to neutralize. Understanding this changed how I handle every emotional surge. Instead of fighting the feeling or getting lost in stories of why I'm feeling it, I started watching it like a scientist, observing, timing, noting the physical sensations. Let me share this practical technique that works in this critical window. I call it the wave method. Watch. Notice the emotions arising. Allow. Let it move through you. Verify. Check if it's passing naturally. Extend. Only if you choose to. Here's something fascinating. When you don't resist the initial wave, when you don't add a story to it, emotions actually process faster. It's like letting a wave pass under you while swimming rather than trying to fight against it. I used to think I was bad at handling emotions because I felt them so intensely. But now I understand. The intensity isn't the problem. It's our resistance to feeling them, our habit of mentally retriggering them, that creates prolonged emotional states. Let me give you a real example. Recently, I received some disturbing news. The initial sting, that's the 90 seconds. But what kept the pain alive wasn't the news itself, but the story I kept telling myself about it. When I recognized this, I could choose, continue the story, or let the natural process complete. Here's what is powerful about that 90-second rule. It gives you a framework for emotional freedom. Knowing that any emotional chemical response has a natural endpoint changes how you experience feelings. They become more like weather patterns than permanent conditions. But what about those emotions that seem to stick around forever? Here's what I've discovered. We're usually re-triggering them every few minutes with our thoughts. It's like hitting replay on a song and wondering why the music won't stop. Let me share a technique I use called emotional time stamping. When a strong emotion hits, I actually note the time. This simple act helps me to recognize, is this a new wave of emotion, or am I re-triggering the old one with my thoughts? The most liberating part of understanding the 90-second rule is realizing that emotions themselves aren't the problem. They're just information, chemical messages moving through our body. The struggle comes from our habit of mentally wrestling with them. Think about it like this. Every emotion has a beginning, a middle, and an end, just like a breath, just like a heartbeat, just like a wave. When we stop interrupting this natural cycle, we discover our emotions actually know how to process themselves. Here's something crucial. The goal isn't to stop feeling emotions. The goal is to let them move through us naturally without getting stuck in the undertow of our own thoughts. Remember this. You are not your emotions. You are the awareness watching them arise and pass. This simple truth has the power to transform your entire emotional experience. When you understand the 90-second rule, you gain a superpower, the ability to experience emotions without being overwhelmed by them. You learn to surf the waves rather than drowning in them. Your emotions are not your enemy. They're not permanent. They're messages moving through your body in 90-second waves. Your only job is to allow them to complete their natural cycle. This is your emotional intelligence, your inner wisdom, your natural resilience. Trust in the process. Trust in those 90 seconds. Trust in your body's innate ability to process and release.